Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. As people are filling in, I just want to introduce myself quickly. My name is Emily Haight, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the MCN Social Media SIG, or Special Interest Group. And I'm really delighted to be here today to introduce our speakers for today's session. Pauline Noyes, who's one of my colleagues at the New York Historical Society, as well as Rosanna Flouty. And they will be talking about interdepartmental approaches to transforming digital workflow and decision-making at the New York Historical Society. I'll let you all take it away.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. So I'm Rosanna Flouty. I'm Managing Director of HG & Co. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm doing a quick visual description. I'm a white cisgendered female wearing black rimmed glasses, gold circular earrings, and a gray sweater. I'm seated in an attic room with white walls and framed with gray trim, and there's some windows behind me. Pauline?
Hi, everybody. I'm Pauline Noyes. I'm the Associate Director of Teen Programs at the New York Historical Society. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And let's see, a description of me is that I'm a white cisgendered female. I have brown hair. I'm wearing a gray shirt. I have brown glasses with a little bit of blue. And I am in my living room, which you can't see because I'm using a Zoom background that has the New York Historical Society exterior of the building on it.
Awesome. So we just wanted to take no liberties to assume that everyone has already viewed the pre-recorded session. I just had put a screen grab here. If it's helpful, it was one that we recorded about a month ago, and we definitely wanted to bring you all up to date, but also give some high level just sort of framing. And so this IMLS grant that Pauline is going to share just a bit more detail is, I think, so exciting because it's looking at the aspect of digitizing collections and CMS for libraries, curators, and researchers. And I'm going to read this because it's actually part of the grant, that while the New York Historical has systematically digitized its collections and content management systems for use by librarians, curators, and researchers, its digital assets are not maximized to support the full range of educational programming. And why we think this is so exciting is that teens have really been viewed as the heart and soul and sort of digital future of how research will be connected and conducted in the future. And that the fact that teens have already had such an active role within New York Historical and through the work that Pauline's department does, that this ability to really bring people across the departments that have already been working around the assets of the museum and the library, and to really think about what the future of digital research and scholarship will be, but letting teens and their modalities and how they conduct work lead the way. And I'm going to just also say that while it's so unusual, I think, to let teens kind of be these sort of proxy for the future of what audiences will be and the way that audiences will think about the ways that they personally connect to collections and to library resources and museums. So I'm just going to read this, but I think that teens have long been centered within this work, but they see themselves as more diverse and more representative of the audiences that New York Historical seek to engage. This has been a thread that I think has been well aware within the organization, but I'm just going to bring us up to date with not just with a focus group that happened in February of 2020. And this was right before the before times, that it felt it was one of these really incredible opportunities to hear the teens speak on behalf of themselves and why they see themselves as so critical to New York Historical's mission. And so in that focus group, and I think this speaks to the importance of this work, in the way that teen programs are often the Trojan horse of museum practice, that they saw themselves and their role to expand New York Historical's mission, to diversify, to expand history, and that they knew and acknowledged they possess more diverse socioeconomic and racial backgrounds than anybody working full-time at the New York Historical. They see their role as making history accessible, and that accessibility, inclusion, diversity is critically important to what the work that they do, but also that the mission that they have to bring these new perspectives as researchers in the world. And they see themselves as astute researchers, but they know that they want more efforts on behalf of the organization to center marginalized voices, and spoke so clearly and eloquently about what they saw as the social justice mission of the institution. And maybe finally, that they love video production, they love creating animations, they love engaging in this high level across the collections. Maybe that one place that digital humanities, or that practice and definition, still is a little bit fuzzy on the edges, but that I think is indicative of that framing of the word and how it gets used in our field. So, and with that, I want to make sure that Pauline explains the nuances of the grant and what it's funding, and the turnkey sessions that was also recorded in our session. Pass it to you, Pauline.
Oh, thanks, Rosanna. Well, I thought that I was going to talk about the teens and what's happened since then. I'm so sorry, but I can talk a little bit about the grant too, if that's helpful.
I think so. I think it would be helpful. Just brief, yeah.
All right. So the grant. We're so, by the way, thankful to IMLS for giving us this grant. Thank you so much. And what the grant allowed us to do was to really maximize the collections, as Rosanna said, for optimal use in education programs, specifically for teens. Just the nuts and bolts of the grant was that we received funding for all of us to take classes and courses. For each of us, we could take classes and courses related to whatever was needed to develop more digital capacity in our own program areas. So my needs were different than Catherine's needs, who's here, by the way, who I think we'll hear from later, who oversees the museum digital collection. But we took trainings and courses. And then another big aspect of it was that we have a monthly meeting. And that meeting, so you take all these classes and it's so great and attend the conferences, but then the idea is that you have to give back. And the giving back part is attending a monthly meeting where we share out what we've learned in the classes, but we also brainstorm how everything can benefit teen programs. And then from there, we come up with projects and work on the projects that will benefit the teen programs and the digital work that they do, but also we carefully select the projects so that it's also building digital capacity for each staff member. So it's a win-win for everybody, because the teens, their work in our new digital media center, the Tech Commons, deepens so much, but also everybody at NYHS gets to benefit from this training. And also more than that, this meeting with each other and working across departments. And what we found is that one of the most beneficial things was just having that space to work together across departments. And that's fueled so many other big initiatives for the museum, including our current development of the new website. Rosanna, is there anything that you would add to that in terms of overview of the grant? Okay. So Rosanna mentioned the focus groups. And for us, the focus groups have been so valuable, to really hear from the teens and teachers on what they want in terms of the digital collection and our digital assets. And what we found was that the teens, what they want is actually very similar to what our other audiences want. They want more representation. They want more relevant material to what's happening in the world. They want more underrepresented narratives. And so from that, I could just give you a quick update that, since we created the presentation, that, right now, that focus group, has led to so many things, so one of our new projects is that through the group, speaking of diversity in collections, I was able to find out that our director of the library digital collection, actually, he got an NEH grant. That's already been done, like it was 4 years ago and it's been completed. And the grant allowed him to look at our library collection, and it allowed him to go through the collection, and basically the grant was to pull any materials that related to people of color. And so he created, in terms of the library, like if you go into the library and use the cataloging system, you can access this collection, which is called the AHMC collection. But the thing is that that collection hasn't been digitized yet. And so finding out about this collection, education didn't know about this collection at all. Finding out about it was so exciting because now we're working on ways for our educators to be able to collaborate to get more of that material digitized. And we've created a teen advisory council so that the teens can meet every month to make decisions on what gets digitized from that collection. So there's been a lot of really exciting things that have come since that I'm happy to talk about, but I'll leave it there because we really want to hear your questions, and I see there's some in the chat already.
Yeah. Pauline, I might just read the first one because it says, what time planning and developing should we be planning for a teen group? It was exciting to see the video in the group, seeing their own work in the exhibition. What was the lead up to that moment?
Time planning and developing. Yeah, so that's a great question, thank you. So Teen Leaders is a year-long program. And I have to say that, you know, it came together pretty quickly. We planned it over the summer, what it was gonna be, and worked with the curators. And then the teens started in October. And so they found out about the project, they did all the research, and then the exhibition went live in January, actually. So it was a pretty tight turnaround. Yeah, so it didn't take that much time considering. Happy to answer any further questions related to that.
And Emily, do you want to read these questions?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
So there was one other question that said, I'm curious to hear more about the partnership between Evaluator and Museum. So this may be a question that you both can answer. The presentation shared some evaluation takeaways, but could you say more about the extent to which evaluators acted as thought partners throughout and what that looked like?
Pauline, I would love for you to jump in on that and then I'll add.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'll say that it's meant a tremendous amount for us. You know, I think working across departments on something that is for teens and for education, it can be hard to ask for things. You know, it can be hard to really put teens at the center. And so having Rosanna there to be able to be that neutral person in the room and also that, you know, tech expert in the room, the consultant, to be able to guide us in that really helped, and also to be able to advocate for the teens. And then also just pushing us in terms of finding the opportunities. You know, I mentioned a few of the projects, but there are other projects, and just really like pulling everything together. You know, she's that person in the room that can understand all our perspectives. You know, she has the education background, she has the tech background, and can really see that opportunity of ways to collaborate.
Humbled, Pauline. But I want to say also, I mean, I think at HD&Co, our role is to be the critical friend. And so we ask questions, we provide data in real time if that can be helpful. We also make sure that there's a framework and a cadence of work. So we've been meeting every month, just about, and then a couple times then Pauline and I will meet between those meetings, just to be clear that we have a really strong agenda. And since all of the staff members are coming back to the meetings and also at times sharing out either updates of their work or also sharing some of the learnings that they've had from classes that they've been taking, I think it's just to make sure we always turn the conversation towards the end as a brainstorming session of how this impacts teen programs. And I think as the outside and not an internal to New York Historical, it's a little bit easier for me to sort of press these acupuncture points so that we're ending up with some tangible takeaways at the ends of the meeting.
Great, thank you. And there was another question in the chat from Brenda who said, sorry, there's honking right outside my door.
What's up, New York?
Yeah, what's up, New York? Can you expand a little on the crosswalks between museum and library collections?
Definitely, and I think Catherine actually might be a great person to talk about that because she oversees the museum digital collection. But before Catherine talks, I'll say that, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. You know, the benefit of the cross collection access, that was really, you know, we needed the digital collection for the teens, right? But then the way that we made it relate to everybody else's collection was, I mean, first of all, it's not optimal for our audiences to, you know, to look on two different platforms, right? So like we're thinking about our young scholars, our audiences, and you might find the library collection, for example, and not know that you're totally missing the museum collection. And most outside audiences don't understand that it's two different platforms, and why should they have to understand that, you know? And so we had been wanting to develop a crosswalk between the two collections for a long time. It's been a long-term goal of ours, and you know, and also it's more important than ever because we're about to, you know, launch a new website. And so we have members of our new web development team as part of the digital initiatives team, and everything that we're exploring in terms of developing that crosswalk goes into the new redesign of the museum, so that ultimately we can solve this problem and create like you know, a way to connect the two collections. But I am definitely not the expert on this, so I would love for the wonderful Catherine Stalin to share your thoughts too.
Hi. So yeah, so essentially we are sort of phase one was sort of proof of concept, and so we had a mutual spreadsheet that we entered library and museum objects. And one of the things sort of which is of interest, of course, is sometimes the content can be the same, but we think of there's also the display factor, you know, the labels that we display for the content of that particular field. And so sort of phase one was proof of concept, and phase two will be addressing the display questions. And all of this is working towards, as Pauline said, our website redesign.
Thanks, Catherine.
And there's the chat is blowing up right now in terms of additional questions for you all. Let's see here, let me grab one. Can you share a little about the courses / professional development your team undertook and what was most valuable? Any recommendations for a good place to start? Obviously all the folks here love conferences.
Sure. Yeah, Catherine, do you want to add to that too? I feel like you took some good, you're taking and some good ones.
Yeah, I'm sort of focusing more on SQL courses, but also I want to do some more library-oriented courses because it's to develop a better understanding of the library systems. But I have to say, it's absolutely, it feels very luxurious to have access to be supported in taking courses. And people have taken ones in linked open data, and we've been using various resources from online courses to things that meet in person.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, I would say that, you know, in terms of, yeah, so Catherine is taking those courses. Henry, who oversees the library digital collection, has been to IslandOraCon. So the platform that the library uses is Islandora. So he's been to IslandOraCon, and he's taking courses to better understand the updated version of Islandora. Catherine is also thinking about taking classes that relate to Islandora to think about that crosswalk between the two better. For me in education and for my team and, you know, the rest of the education team, we've been taking more like digital media and digital scholarship classes to better understand the kinds of projects that the students can do. And I'm actually about to start a coding boot camp so that, and I'm also thinking about taking a CMS class so that, you know, with the new website, we can do all kinds of projects on the website. So I want to understand better how the teams can show their work on the website. Henry in the library has also taken metadata classes and classes on digital cataloging. Recently, you know, he was talking about one that he took on implicit bias and digital cataloging of photographs, which was really interesting for us in education to think about. And then the web team, so they're taking like user experience, you know, they're thinking about the new website. So they're taking user experience classes and digital project management classes. And then that will be able to turnkey to us to think about, when we're sharing our work, how do we think about the users that are using our website in addition to our own needs? And just also, how do we get more organized with these cross-departmental classes?
Yeah, and I just want to say, I sort of think of the classes in two different ways. So there's sort of the skill building classes, which relate specifically to my piece, so I can do my piece better. But then I sort of feel they're the courses that touch on maybe more what other people do, so I understand what they do better, or where things might be going a little bit better. But I'm making a concerted effort to try to take courses or conferences in the different areas.
Definitely. Yeah, me too. Like, I'm trying to understand IT's role better. IT is also part of our team. Yeah, and I agree that, what we found is that, because at first we were like, how is it useful to share out this specific tech knowledge to the rest of the group when we all have different jobs? But we found that it really builds tech skills for the person who took the class, but digital skills for the person who took the class, but then digital literacy for the rest of our team. That's really crucial in having a kind of foundational language to be able to work with each other.
That's so important. There's also another question from Liz Neely in the chat that says, it seems like you learned a lot and had some surprising positive outcomes. Knowing what you do now, what would you share with others of us on what you would do differently if you started today?
Such a good question.
Rosanna, what do you think? Do you want to start?
Well, so I think to Catherine's point about how exciting it is to really be able to look out in the world and look at really any course one would take that would help one's work, and also attend a conference that would help one's work. I think that there could be this opportunity to maybe also help, well, I should say, in the COVID times, New York Historical has extraordinarily supported their staff to go sort of above and beyond the workflow that has already been so demanding on all of us, on everybody who works in the sector. And I think that having time within work or some release time to be able to take these courses, because the staff are doing these on top of their everyday jobs. And it is certainly, I think, both, it's like the wonderful opportunity, but I acknowledge how difficult it is to make time and to even be able to think critically about one's learning, and then turnkey it about how it's going to impact workflow, and then turnkey that again to see how it's going to impact team programs. So it's sort of being, I think that if design and money and time were no constraints, I think being able to have some release time from the workday. But Pauline, I think I'd love for you to answer too.
Totally, yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with that. Part of our salary is covered, part of the grant, as part of the grant, so that, technically it should be built into our schedule. But I think that, yeah, in the future, we talked about just really talking to senior leadership about this to like make sure that it's a priority for people and that they have more time to take it. And including senior leadership more in these, in terms of just understanding how much time is taking and also the importance of this. And then I think the other thing that we really learned was that we're so grateful for both aspects, to be able to take the classes, go to the conferences, and have these monthly meetings. And in fact, the monthly meetings have become way more meaningful than we anticipated. To us, it's one of the more, valuable parts of the grant, but it's a thing in itself, like keeping that monthly meeting and the projects that come out of it and all that communication and working together. And so I think in retrospect, it's kind of like two grants, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't necessarily have done both together, because, but it's really interesting, and like, having those classes helps a lot, obviously.
There's another question here in the chat from Kathy Sigmund, specifically to Rosanna. What types of data did you provide in real time to the NYHS team to help them make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where not only being, I think, knowledgeable to like what else is happening around other museums, but I think that's where we add value, is that we have a lot of other projects at HD & Co with similar or sort of adjacent concerns. And so I think it's really being able, in this particular case, being able to share what's happening with other either grant-funded initiatives. I think one is the Museums for Digital Learning, because we're also the evaluator on a project also funded from IMLS that suddenly in even some of the work that we're doing with New York Historical, where they're contributing to an online platform to pull together all museum digital collections, but also education content so that teachers can be able to use it and be able to also these resource kits that become very rich depositories for ways of interacting with objects of collections. And I think that it sort of helps to like bolster the decision making that they're already doing to make sure that they're being informed of other projects that are happening, as well as focus groups. And we have some still work that we're going to do with teacher focus groups and sort of also making sure that we're pulling together some 360 views of how New York Historical is perceived.
Awesome, thank you. And I know we have about 4 minutes left. There's still a few more questions, so I'll try and run through them quickly for you all. One question is, I imagine there's a great backlog of projects and archival materials that the NYHS hopes to digitize. Did you experience any resistance to education-led digitization? And what museum-wide benefits have you seen from prioritizing materials relevant to educational programs, like your work with teen audiences?
So yeah, so I have to say that like the members of the team have been very generous and like willing to help, and I'm very grateful for that. I think with some members of our team, obviously it's not that they're not willing to help, but it's more like a time issue, and so it's like, I can help you, but you have to know that I have all this other, all these other things on my plate. But honestly, I think that's led to really interesting solutions,
That's right.
And so, for example, when we wanted more digitized in the library collection, the head of the library digital collection was like, I just don't have time for this. And so because I had, he had already done another, it's not like he hadn't been doing projects, obviously, but, and he's such a great guy, but in that it was like, okay, wait, I understand metadata because you've shared this out. I understand basically how this works. And we were able to talk through, again, finding I had that common language with him. So we were able to talk through and also with Catherine as well, we were able to talk through what could the educators help? Because at that time with COVID, the museum was shut down. We had the educators, but we didn't have anything for them to do. And so we found a solution, and same thing, that informed now, because when we're thinking about getting more of the digital collection up with library, we can use the educators now. So I think, those restraints and people just being honest about where they're at has led to really creative solutions that have been more powerful than otherwise.
I'm just going to add, as someone who is the outside observer to this extraordinary group, I really see the staff bringing their best selves and these aha moments of like, I didn't know you needed that right now for your online programs that started in March. Let me make sure I don't delete these files because I know they could be useful to education. Or I didn't know that it would be helpful to at least hear 6 months out or 4 months out or whatever the timeline might be of a new huge amount of digitized aspects of the collection that's about to be more publicly available. And if education can just know about that a little bit more in advance, it helps them to do also incredible work too. So, but I've been amazed at how the cadence of work has been intense. We meet every month. It's a lot on top of the classes.
I think we just have a few moments left. So if there's anything,
Cool.
any last words that any of you'd like to say?
I think just that I think, Pauline, you should mention the any efforts to kind of tie working groups beyond this grant.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. We definitely are thinking about ways to continue. Catherine had the great idea for us to have a working group beyond this so that we can just continue to work together, so we're really excited about that. Yeah, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to everybody's questions, but our emails are in the presentation and we can add them to the chat too. And we're very happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much for coming, everybody. We really appreciate it. What about you, Rosanna? Do you have last thoughts?
I don't. It's just been such an absolute honor to be involved in this work.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good one.